apples and trees. The world's a perfect design. Do it all so well, and you know it. Let your light shine, you know you show it. Mercy, joy, and success. Every day is a chance for happiness. Yes, we can live a beautiful, crazy plan. Every day is a celebration. Every day is a celebration. Welcome to the Great Song Adventure, the third of our episodes with Carole King. This is the middle. We have 5, so this is the middle. And this one ended up being long because she talked so extensively about the early days and writing with my dad.
Yeah, it's very special. And I love the chance to talk to both of you about your dad, about Gerry. And she speaks with so much reverence and love, but also with reality, you know, what it was like living with them. They were husband and wife as well as collaborators. And that was an unusual dynamic. And we get the whole story. She really opened up in a way I've never heard her speak before.
Yeah, and she respected my father, his gifts and what he would say. You know, they had such mutual respect. He had so much respect for her.
Mm-hmm.
They really did bring out the best in each other when they were writing.
They did. And they were very serious hit songwriters. They talk in a later episode about writing sideways songs where they're really trying to write songs like something that's currently popular. I mean, they were about writing hits. At the same time, their songs were authentic. As you said, they always made it a great song. They weren't writing one just to be a hit. It was always going to be a great song, and both of them brought that to it. And they both were great craftsmen. I mean, Gerry, your dad, was a great craftsman with wood, with inner rhymes. I mean, they were bringing those kind of craft qualities from previous generations that they got from Rodgers and Hammerstein, and really beautiful, you know, use of words. You know, your dad's words were so perfect that I didn't even notice it growing up. They just fit perfectly. Now I look at them and say, you know, they didn't just come out of nowhere. He made those work perfectly. But also your mother is such a great melodist. Her melodies are just wonderful. And you know, we asked her about that. What makes a melody great? And that's a question not everyone can answer. It's a hard question to answer. And she really answered it. She talked about how it's a conversation and it's a progression. And it says a lot about her because she's a very well-respected musician, even among songwriters. She's a songwriter, and that she has so much wisdom and greatness with the craft of music. And she can talk about it and explain it as well.
I find it interesting that my father was so into playing chess because it's a very strategic game, and the way he wrote lyrics was very strategic.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little bit like a chess game. If you're going to put this there, later you're going to have to move that couplet there, and you're going to have to rhyme, and you are seeing a few steps ahead of where you are when you're writing a lyric.
That's right. It is kind of a puzzle, but you know, everything you do affects the next thing that happens, and he was pretty great with that.
This is the third of our 5-part series with my mother, Carole King. Here we go.
Yeah, Gerry. I mean, going back to a point I made before, Gerry did change rock and roll.
When you would write like Locomotion, it's a great rock and roll song. And when you guys would do rock and roll, it's great.
How did that one go down, actually? Yeah. How did the dance moves and all of that?
Eva invented the dance moves.
Gerry did she do it before there was a song?
No. Gerry wrote a lyric based on words having to do with trains. And I think we wrote it inspired by Dee Dee Sharp mashed potatoes.
Locomotion, did he have the word first? Is that where that came from?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that one he actually did write the words first, and it was very easy for me to play a D chord and go from there.
Yes, indeed. But even then I noticed it goes like the 1/6 to the 2 chord, but then the next time the 2 is major, you know, instead of E minor.
Yeah.
There's always like one kind of.
I don't know why. That would have been me, not him.
A little more, you know, gives it an extra feeling. That's a Carole King kind of thing.
When did
never anything just conventional. Yeah. There's always a little extra.
I'm just thinking, when Eva came into the mix, did you know early on we're going to get our babysitter to sing this, or did you?
No, but Gerry, we knew that she could sing. And I think we just thought, you know, maybe we'll impress her into service to sing background or something like that.
Right.
And locomotion, Dee Dee Sharp was definitely the inspiration for that. I recall that because we were in competition, not only with Barry and Cynthia, but with, Cameo Parkway in Philly. And so that was a whole scene. And Motown, we were in competition with them, but it wasn't competition. It was more inspiration. We just took inspiration from each other. And what great songs, Smokey Robinson and back and forth. And, I heard that they were inspired by us too. It was just so vibrant. And so, when we had the song, we thought, well, let's get Eva to do it. And the musical makes the very salient point that we lost our babysitter and I had to do everything.
Yeah, and there was a nice scene where Barry and Cynthia in the musical say, now they're having hits with their babysitter.
I take good care of my baby. It was a funny thing to write a babysitter. Was it done that way? Baby had nothing to do with a baby rocking in arms. It had to do with baby in the girlfriend sense. And again, Gerry, oh my God, the nobility, the noble, and it's okay, she's not mine anymore, but you take care of her, okay, because I loved her. I want you to treat her right. What a noble thought. And he just nailed it. I was always struck that Louise told me about his a response when Dylan came out, which is really different from most of really successful songwriters. My understanding is that he just felt like, God, compared to that, what we're doing is not important.
That is true.
He really saw it in that way.
That is absolutely true. A lot of the things in the musical, I keep coming back to that, but a lot of things in the musical are true. Most of the things are true. There may be some time changes or there may be a funny line inserted, but Doug McGrath, who wrote the book, got it right.
But that response...
And that happened. He started to flip out. He felt irrelevant. And also the Beatles coming in with these raw, powerful, just simple songs. John Lennon was very similar to Gerry in that way. He could take the simplest of words and give them the deepest meaning. Mm. So Gerry felt kind of irrelevant.
Even when they were publicly saying they wanted to be Goffin and King?
You know what? Gerry didn't hear that. I mean, he heard them say that. He didn't believe it. I was like, oh, that's cool. He didn't believe it.
He didn't believe it.
And also, we've talked about this before. Gerry was not lauded in a big way until after he passed away in June 2014. And then suddenly the world went crazy. Oh my God, Gerry Goffin's gone. And he got so much publicity and everybody poured out what his lyrics had meant to them. And we were saying, well, where were they when he was still alive? And I contend, and I think you'll agree, he wouldn't have believed it, even if people would have, when he was alive, said, oh my God, Gerry Goffin is the greatest thing since sliced bread. No, Gerry was, really... the word isn't insecure because he knew his gifts. He knew that about himself. I think he felt underappreciated. And in any situation, when we walked into a room, I was the one who sat down and played the piano, and with this piano feel that I was purportedly known for, whatever that was, I got all the attention. Yeah. And nobody paid attention to him, and I think that bothered him.
Years before he died, he would still ask me, you think Will You Love Me Tomorrow is a good song? He didn't know. He was wondering, is it any good?
You're probably right, but I think that may be colored by the fact that at that time he was much older, and also, his thinking had changed. But at the time, he was driven. He knew it had to be this way. He knew where things had to be. He had visions. He knew whether the world would appreciate them or not. Maybe he didn't know, but he didn't care at that point. He just knew he had to get it done that way.
But when you had hits and success, did he take pride in that and recognize that was a sign of success?
Here's where his psychology plays in. He was uncomfortable with success. he was more comfortable driving toward a goal than having achieved it. Once he achieved a goal, it made him very uncomfortable. Things were going too well. He needed to
Didn't feel like he deserved it.
There was that too. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I have a question that's a little off topic, but
We love you, Gerry.
Gerry, Daddy.
I love when you imitate him too.
I know.
Everybody that knew him, he has a famous saying, you know, like when people would get to a beautiful scene and they'll take out their cameras, or now they'll take out their phones. 1, 2, 3.
Oh yeah, he said take
pictures with your eyes.
I like that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, just because of observing you, you seem to be more of an introvert than an extrovert. You seem to prepare for things better than any human being I've ever seen. I mean, whenever you go into anything that you're doing, whether it's travel, whether it's listening to a mix, doing an interview, you know, you're super prepared. Like you've done all the homework, know all the details, very, very detail oriented. How did you get that way?
Probably my dad.
Yeah.
My father was very, both my parents valued excellence. And I was brought up to do things well and right. And right meant preparing, mastery of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And there is a level of preparation. Like when I say that I sit down at the piano and things come out, I took piano lessons, but I didn't like them. My mom would let me, you know, take them when I wanted to and not take them. But I did play all the time, and I did write, and I did, you know, just little songs or ditties or whatever. And ear training, I did all that myself. To this day, I am stymied by some songs, notably the After Love Is Gone by Earth, Wind and Fire, and also You, which is similarly arranged. I finally learned the correct chords because David Foster. I said, David, you arranged this, you wrote it. What can you show me? And you know, but I always tried to master those things. I'd listen to the radio and try to train my ear. And then that's part of preparation. So I don't know what. I think it's that my parents were both, but in particular my father, he had a very high standard of excellence. And
Is it true that you have perfect pitch?
no, I don't.
Or absolute pitch?
No,
That's
I
not
do
true.
not. I have relative pitch.
Perfect pitch. I read that you had it and certain things would bother you and that your dad would even show you off. You could identify any
No,
notes.
that was relative pitch. My
Okay.
dad would
That's a difference.
relative pitch means that if you play a C, and right now I'm going to make, no, I'm not going to embarrass myself because I'll make a guess and I'll be wrong. See, slightly off. But now that I know, C. So my dad would play, and I'd go E flat, and he'd play, and I'd go F. But I can do that. I could always do that, but I couldn't find C on my own, or E flat or anything on my own.
But I understand you were loving music first thing, like when you were 3, you were curious about music.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I loved music and I had a knack for it. I would sing things I heard on the radio or just, yeah.
If there's an appliance humming, it's always going to be B flat.
Is it really?
I think all appliances hum at B flat.
I found, that's probably true. I found things like sometimes I'd be lying on a mattress.
Yeah.
And I'd sigh and I'd go, And one of the notes would resonate on my way through, and I'd find the note, and it was almost always A. The springs were tuned to A.
That's interesting.
In every mattress I've ever...
That's interesting. Oh, okay, so A is the key of love.
It's the key of sleep.
And happy.
No,
I think it is happy.
if you want to vibrate your mattress, you better sing in the key of A.
Well, you know, bridges do that. Did you know that, like, bridges, suspension bridges, there's a resonance that they do. I don't know if it's wind or if vehicles go on them or something, but there is a resonance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear the steel and
Yeah.
And do we know what note it is?
I don't know, but that is interesting that there is resonance in these.
I've always found A major a real happy key. And most of the Beatles songs are in A major.
Really?
And Lennon said at one time, it's because we learned all the Buddy Holly songs. They were all in A, so that's what we did.
Interesting,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just interviewed Sonny West, who wrote Rave On, and he was talking about Buddy Holly. There's all these crazy tie-ins of...
Well, that's back to the Great Song Adventure. It really is a great song adventure because you're doing all these interviews and tying musicians together with each other that may not know they're tied together.
Yeah, it's interesting, the connections. I was really surprised the first time I ever interviewed Randy Newman. He said, number one, when I started out, I didn't even know you should play a separate accompaniment from the melody until I heard Carole King. It's like, oh. And I said, well, when you started, who was your main person? Who was the main person? It was, Carole King.
Which I never knew until your interview.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But you got, as you probably know, a lot of respect. You're considered among songwriters like a real songwriter. There's a lot of respect for what you've done.
I am appreciative of all of it. I still... Sometimes, it's not that I don't feel I deserve it because I do the work, but so do so many people. Like, you have not had that standard yet, but you're a good songwriter. Why me? And I don't know the answer to that. That's one of those things that has informed my character. I got famous as a songwriter early and then famous again as an artist and then
Unusual.
World.
Well, I think part of the reason is because you're way better than a lot of songwriters. You're really, really great. Because these songs last.
I'll own that I'm good. I don't know why my particular brand of good has had the kind of success it has, but what informs my character is that I try to give back in whatever ways I can. This goes back to the song One, what can one do? One can only do what one can. I would like to make the world a perfect place. I wrote this in my memoir. I said, my mantra is, I just want everybody to be happy. I don't want anybody to suffer. That is what I want. That's what I pray for every day. That is not going to happen. And that, by the way, comes probably from a child of divorced parents that I am. Parents who fought. So I just want to do what I can to make the world a better place. And I feel that I don't want to say I don't deserve the fame because I have done the work, but in response to the fame and the appreciation, that's my commitment every day. This is me now, 70, I don't know, whatever age I am now. I keep forgetting. I keep making myself 77, but I'm actually only 76 on this date. Mm-hmm. At 76, I have been doing this for years unconsciously, and then after a while it became conscious. Every day I wake up, I say, how can I serve today? And serving may just be, you go to the grocery store and you look the person who's carrying up your food, and you look them in the eye and say, thank you, and smile. And you mean it. Mm-hmm. That's a service. So everybody can serve. My writing songs is a form of service that I was given. Great. I love that. But I think it's really important for me to do what I can to make the world a better place. And believe me, I'm not perfect. I swear at people sometimes.
You've enriched just having so many great songs in the world that you've written. That's more than most humans ever do. But it's impacted so many people in such a profound way.
But I was the instrument also. I didn't only do it. And you know that. And Louise knows that. And every songwriter you interviewed so far seems to have that awareness.
I want to ask about that awareness because, Fred Tackett, you just did a piece on Bob Dylan. We were talking about artists. Okay, here's what we were talking about earlier. David Bowie or Prince, they probably wouldn't do these interviews talking about the way that they went about the writing.
Yeah, I begged Prince to do it. He said, I dig it, but no.
Who?
Prince.
Oh.
He wouldn't do it.
No.
I tried though.
He's not that guy.
There's something
Yeah.
about retaining the mystery of how things are done and it not being a work ethic. It's a private work ethic, but it's a personal universe. It's a personal story that the world can interpret, like Bob Dylan. The world can interpret what Bob Dylan did or at any point in the Jesus phase or all of it as they wish. But he's not getting his prompts from what the world thinks. You've always been someone who just done what you feel is right. You haven't taken the temperature in the room before saying, what am I going to do?
Right.
I need to write this song because I need to write it. I need to say this. I need to do it this way. So my question to you is, what do you do to protect yourself, recharge yourself? Because I think these are important questions that artists who are starting or people who are out in the world and successful, there has to be a way to protect yourself from the noise and the influence and the projections and all the things people want, especially once you have celebrity. How do you protect yourself and recharge yourself? And what is your renewing source for all of this?
Life. Life, seriously.
I feel really pedantic right now.
No, and you were part of that. It was really important to me to, bring your vitamins to school because you didn't take them.
So embarrassing.
And just even now, well, okay, so I'm writing a novel that's a diversion of my creative abilities into something. I'm trying to conquer a new thing. And I have already proven I can write a book because the memoir was well received. So I just challenge myself with things to get better at. And I always kept why I'm not a road dog is because for me, it's really important to be in life some of the time. I mean, there are people who go on the road who don't know how to get money from a bank because they're handed a per diem.
That's right.
And I'm not putting them down. It's a different way of life. But for me, it was really important to live life. Granted, I have not lived life without means for a long time. I have been blessed to have enough means. I'm also cognizant that means are not limitless, and I haven't overspent my means, which a lot of people tend to do when they are in the position of suddenly they're self-sufficient and making lots of money.
That's why they're still touring right now, those people.
Good point.
They have to.
But I try to keep a grip on how people live every day who don't have as much means. And I try to be aware of what their lives are like in whatever ways I can. I mean, everybody has a story, and everybody's story is amazing. One way or the other. Some people's stories are horrible. I can think of one person in particular that I'm not going to discuss today, but there are, it's just, to me, I'm an observer. I'm effectively an only child. My brother was not, he was intellectually challenged and lived in a school and a home until he died, where they were better able to help him navigate life.
But he was born with birth defects.
It wasn't birth defects. He was oxygen deprived, I guess.
In the birth.
In the birth,
Yeah.
and
Complications.
he was deaf and intellectually, and challenged. And so I am effectively an only child, and I've always been an observer. I would go to a restaurant, and I'd bring my book, and then I'd look up and I'd sort of study people. I'd be on the subway, which inspired Beautiful, the song. And I'd see all the people and make up stories about this one is that and that one's this. And I'm an observer, but I want to be, I was on the subway.
Until fairly recently when we all said, stop taking the subway.
Really?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I am 76 and I can afford to stop taking this subway. There are still 76-year-old people who can't afford to.
But
And
sometimes you
always-
get places quicker if you do take the subway.
That is true.
Depending where you are. I guess we're talking about New York City. Right?
That is true.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I try to be aware of how many variations there are in lives that are being lived. And that's something that's really important to me. And that informs my songs and informing my book. I'm writing about a woman who is roughly my age. She's 4 years younger than I am. And her life trajectory starts similarly. She's Jewish. She comes from New York, but she grew up on the Upper West Side, which is a whole different thing. Her father was a cantor in Temple. And she starts on the path that I was supposed to do, which was she becomes a teacher, my character. And the thing is, I know that had I become a teacher, I never would have lasted in the system. The system would have crushed me. I would have been, as many teachers feel today, but now that's today. But I mean, even then you had to comply with certain things. And I understand the need for a structure with which one has to comply as a teacher. Would have made me crazy. I'm too independent. And Janine, my character, winds up getting, they couldn't fire her because she was in the union, but they did whatever they did. I'm getting into too much detail. But it's so much fun to be writing about somebody and other people and I'm making it up, but honestly, just like the songs write themselves, the book sometimes writes itself. And I think Janine is going to do this one thing in my mind, and she winds up doing something completely different, and I go with it, and it's so much better. It's like life.
Yeah, that you're following the thing as well as leading it. I mean, do you find that when you're writing, you're kind of following the song?
You've got to follow it because it will take you. Where it leads, you will follow.
Can I ask a few more trivial questions before we end?
Okay.
Remember, with the song Kicks, was that written about Gerry? By Man and Wild?
Oh, I don't know.
It was Paul Revere in the radio. I heard the Man and Wild wrote to Gerry that you shouldn't get your kicks from drugs.
It's possible. I have no knowledge.
You and Neil Sedaka wrote songs for each other. There was O. Carroll and O'Neill, right?
Yeah. Mine was sort of a parody of his. I don't know.
You know, when I was growing up, you kind of got the reputation as really the first singer-songwriter. I mean, Neil was there and Paul Anka, there were a few others, but you really seemed like the one that came along that was writing great songs and became a performer. Did it feel that way to you?
I never thought about it. I have one credit thing that I must give to Neil. He introduced me to Donnie Kirshner. So credit to Neil Sedaka.
What are the 3 songs you play in the medley? You said they're your 3 favorite. Hey Girl.
I love Hey Girl.
I love Hey Girl too. Freddie Scott did that.
Freddie Scott, and it's a wail from the heart, Gerry. It's so much Gerry, you know.
But the chords are amazing. It changes.
That's the C over K chord.
Yeah.
That's a chord I just always. That's the chord, and then it resolves to this.
Okay.
So I have to
Hey girl.
Where's the key? There's the chord. That's the resolution. Chord.
That's nice.
It's the same chords.
Yeah.
And it's a major seventh, which is another favorite of mine. Now I do the same thing. Modulated. And then it's a major seventh.
This one.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, here it is. And this is my favorite chord in the whole song. It only occurs once. It's a diminished.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then it goes to this. I don't know where that came from, but that's one of my favorite things that I've ever written with those chords in that combination. But that's
I've heard a 4 with a 5 in the bass is a Carole King chord.
that is correct. Some people call it C over K.
Yes.
That's what you mean by C over K? That's
Yes.
what you mean? I see.
Yeah.
By the way, there was a discussion between me and Brian Wilson as to who did that first, and we never resolved it. We both agreed.
Because I was thinking of the Beach Boys when you
yeah,
just played it.
that great moment in where is it? I have to find it. Ah! Yeah, he does. He uses it
those
a
chords
lot.
all the
That's
time.
The
Great.
definitive moment is and good vibrations.
So
It was
what did
the
he
best
say?
use of that chord ever.
That would
No, we couldn't resolve it.
That's a conversation I would have liked to
I don't
do.
think
Fly
Brian
on the
resolves
wall.
anything ever, does he?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Is Brian still available to interview?
is Brian conversational?
Sometimes, if you talk about music, that's what he talks about.
You know, yeah, and music is what you want him to talk
Of
about.
course.
I hereby
That's when he opens
recommend
up.
that you ask him to do it.
One other thing I wanted to mention, we won't go on all night. I love that. I think the part of the key to the greatness of what you've done is that you have such a good attitude about songwriting. Well, you spoke about writer's block to me in a way I've quoted a lot. You know, you were kind of explaining, as soon as you say you have writer's block, you're creating that. You know, you seem to have an understanding of how not to get in your way. You were saying you don't entertain the idea of writer's block. Or
I don't, you know what, I just know when to take a break, because that's often all it is. I mean, I don't agonize over it.
exactly.
I
you
just
don't
feel
agonize.
myself getting burnt out. It happens when I'm writing my book. I write, it comes through, and all of a sudden I hit a wall, and I go, okay, time to stop. And then you come back later.
Yeah,
I
you
used
have to
to-
stop at some point.
In the studio, when I was starting out, they used to call it diminishing returns. Yes, because people would just feel compelled to stay up all night and use up all the studio time, and then there was a certain point where you'd get diminishing
Yeah,
returns.
Yeah.
because it's exhausting to write songs. It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Well, you've produced me, so you know, like when you are in the booth and I'm singing, you know, that I'll sing it and I might get it on the second take, but we keep going for one more, and then you just say, you know what, we've got it, and you make it work. You
Yeah,
did that on that you know, the Christmas album.
Right. What I realized, you didn't want to sing with the band when we were cutting at record one, and you said, "Can I just sit in the control room and sing it later?" And you were intimidated by the vocal on the demo, and
It was a very high key. It was this Christmas, I think.
yeah. And then I said, "No. You get excited when the band is playing." You said it was a conversation in this conversation, and you got the best vocals that day because you were playing with the band,
Doing
and
it for the band.
You were really excited, and yeah, that's key.
Generally, when you would do vocals, you would play it while you were doing vocals, like for an album, or not.
No, I tend, even in Tapestry, I think I did those separately just to make sure that I could focus on each. But sometimes I did. I mean, I think maybe You've Got a Friend, the original that I did with Charlie playing bass, I think may have been live. Lou will remember, I don't.
You know, we started talking about great melodies. You know, you're playing Richard Rodgers, and it's a hard question, but do you have any idea what makes a melody great? Why is certain melodies great?
I used the word conversational. That's part of it. It's also a melody, a good melody has a flow to it. It has an emotional journey. It takes you on a journey, and it doesn't do so in a way that is trying to do that. It just does it. And there's a naturalness about how something should go. And I don't know how I know that, but I do know when I hear it, and I know when I'm going off of it. And a lot of what I know, I mean, I did know instinctively to begin with. Gerry was so good at that. Gerry had a BS meter. Like I said, he didn't suffer fools either. And, you know, if a melody or a chord, he didn't like my major sevenths as much. It was major sevenths. For him, Gerry likes the majesty of a major chord and another major chord. He didn't love minor chords, although they have their place. And he loved what I did with Hey Girl. I mean, he loved that 4/5, and it's a 4/5 is a suspension. It's in Natural Woman. Oh, baby, what you done to me? Yes, right. Oh, baby, what you done to me? And then sometimes I I did it. I wrote it like this, but I think they recorded. Oh, baby, what's your different bass?
Yeah, the big
But
difference.
anyway, yeah. So it wasn't quite a suspension. But anyway, the what I was going to say is like that is kind of a suspension, 4/5. There's another kind of suspension which that's the notes that's suspended and then it resolves.
Yeah.
Right?
Is
It's
that
hanging
the
there.
fourth? Is that?
Jerry liked those.
Yeah,
He
that's
liked the
interesting.
hanging and then
Yeah, and the resolve, the cadence, the
resolve.
completion. So in your medley that you do live, you do "Hey Girl." What are the other two songs?
I think I do take good care of my baby. I'm into something good.
In the same medley as
It was actually a 6 or 7 song medley, and it ended on "Will You Love Me Tomorrow."
Okay.
I don't remember the order, but it was like the songs of the 60s. Because when I performed it, it was, on tour. By then it was the 80s, but I had a little 60s medley of songs Jerry and I wrote.
So there are songs that fell between the cracks. Like, for an example is the one that I covered, "If I'm Late." How often did you and Dad do a demo where he was singing lead vocal?
Rarely.
Okay,
That was one of them, and I had no recollection of that song till you brought it to my attention.
So that was the year that we moved. It was, I think, 68.
Yeah.
So it must have been a transitional year going into Screen Gems doing, I think Crystal Sound Studios, maybe? I don't remember where it was. So how often have you found demos and of songs that you don't remember?
I personally haven't. I don't go back, really. I don't look back because I'm more in what am I doing today mode.
Do you think songs just are sitting there, that didn't find their way to an artist?
Well, if they are, someone's going to find them and monetize them.
I mean, there's that
Should be your daughter, I think.
Mary Clayton, "Walk On In." That was Walk Right In.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, they were
Mary,
kind
what a great singer she
of
was.
Mary Clayton. Yeah.
She sang on the original "Way Over Yon Sun Shining Cold."
Talking about Jerry singing, when we first met in 1988 at the Salute to the American Songwriter, he sang "Will You Love Me Tomorrow?" And it was really touching. I was so moved by what you said afterwards. You said, that's the best version of that you will ever hear. Mm. Your father, Jerry, sang "Will You Love Me Tomorrow" at the Salute that you were at too when I first met you 30 years ago.
I loved hearing him sing his own songs because he would sing them in the same way that he would sing a Rodgers.
Yeah, he didn't sing it like
song.
a normal singer. And I thought it was so beautiful that you said that. It was always so generous. And
one of the things about Jerry is that he heard it in his head. When it came out, a lot of people thought, they didn't understand what he was trying to get at because he didn't have a musical voice. He had all the passion. And I was like his translator. I mean, seriously, a lot of the stuff that we wrote was something Jerry would sing to me. No, it's like this, and I can't think of a song. I mean,
he'd have music, he'd have melody.
He would sing. I'd be playing the chords or something, and he'd sing, I tried and I know I can't make it alone. It was an unmusical thing. And I knew it was saying, well, I've tried and I know I can't make it alone. It's such a hard way to go. I just can't make it alone. There's something in my soul. And I just took what he did and made it musical. That was what I did. I'm telling you, that guy he was so frustrated by the fact he couldn't communicate it. And then he was frustrated because I had to. You know what I mean? It was like so hard for him in some ways. Because he had all that passion and all those ideas. And like I said, with all the noise in his head, it went away because he was focused on this thing.
And there's so much respect. He had so much respect for you. I mean, and I love, you also said, when you started doing your own lyrics, you said, well, I learned a lot from Jerry. You always talked about him. And you said the biggest lesson, don't be corny. That was his main lesson, right?
Absolutely. That was his word. That's too corny.
Corny.
Too sentimental, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... right now there's this movie out, Bohemian Rhapsody, about Queen, which is all things...
Trying to see it.
Yeah, it's all things not in chronological
it's a little
order,
fictional.
but it's fascinating to see the talent. And I was actually in London. I just moved there when Live Aid happened, and I remember looking at the television when Queen was on. People were out in the garden. It was summertime, and seeing Freddie Mercury with that white T-shirt on TV. So he did one of your songs.
Which?
Freddie Mercury, it was even on your Facebook page at some point. We could look it up. But Freddie did cover one of your songs.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's cool that you don't know that. Yeah, it's... everybody has done them.
I can't know everything.
Yeah.
I remember when the Beatles said Goffin and King, it's like, well, that's Carole King. I mean, I was at the age where I knew Carole King, but I didn't know Goffin and King. And then I learned. It's like, oh... It was very unusual. We didn't know of any other artists who had a whole career before that started.
They read songwriter credits, as Gerry and I did. We always read songwriter credits before we had
I did too. And then I noticed on Tapestry there were Goffin and King songs. I noticed that. I didn't know at the time that those were earlier songs.
Yeah.
And I also never realized, eventually, that Will You Love Me Tomorrow, was very fast. The original version, you slowed it down, your version. I knew the slow version.
Yeah.
Do you remember, did you write it fast? Did it come out fast?
Yeah, that's how we wrote it. Yeah.
Was it... Was that the first version?
No, that's my...
Later.
That was my later version.
It started out...
It started out... Tonight you're mine completely. There's that bass foot.
Yeah, it's good.
Was that your idea? Let's do this song, and I'll do it differently. I'll slow it. I mean,
Probably, and I was for the Tapestry album. I was heavily under the influence of James Taylor, and so that was probably my way of bringing James into that song.
Did you? And
I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Heavily under his influence, meaning I thought he was awesome and wanted to be just like him.
I have this,
wow.
I don't know why I've never asked this, but because I probably was in the room when you did your tour. I think it was 71. I came on tour with you.
Yes. The 72, well, you came to
It was
the UK. It was
the UK.
It was the same tour, but we were on a different leg of it.
Yeah, I think that had a lot to do with why I eventually moved there, because I had a lot of memories. But I know Joni Mitchell came out on that tour.
Yes.
She was dating James Taylor.
James and Joni were a thing on that
They were a
tour.
thing. And so besides that tour, were there other times when you and Joni overlapped in studios or in the same place? Or
Only on the Tapestry album, she was recording in A&M at around the same time we were, and I think we were in Studio B and she was in Studio C with Henry Louis. Mm-hmm. And I forget who else was there. Carpenters were coming and going.
yeah,
I mean, it was, you walked down the halls and it was just...
David T. Walker would be standing out.
That was later. That was a little later. But no, Joni was there, and I don't know if she was singing James then or not, but they sang together on Will You Love Me Tomorrow. They did the backgrounds. And there are pictures still of them with headphones on and sitting together. And so if they weren't a thing, they were about to be, but I don't remember that on the date. But that, yeah, and I would run into, I mean, mostly I ran into Joni when she was with James. I don't think we moved in the exact same circles. I mean, she was with Graham Nash for a while.
Wasn't that Lookout Mountain?
Yeah, I mean, she lived in the
Laurel
house,
Canyon.
Laurel Canyon, but we didn't actually spend a lot of time hanging out together. And you mentioned the word introvert before, which is really funny because, you know, my dad was not an introvert. And I can be. I sometimes feel like I've incorporated my dad because I will go into a room and I'm not really shy in the sense of an introvert. I just like solitude a lot, and I enjoy sort of hanging out with my my muse and being creative and doing my thing. And that's kind of an introvert thing. And Joni was definitely, in her way, an introvert, I think.
I think it's an artist thing, too, that an artist can love solitude to do your work.
Well, but also, which comes first? Do you become the artist because you're an introvert, or are you, which comes first? And I would never have described myself as an introvert until I read a psychological book defining an introvert and explaining that it is okay to be an introvert. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me. So, but, there is that thing about artists. And yes, James, was very solitary. And then he goes out and commands a stage, which, who knew? Because he was very shy.
Yeah.
Very shy. So, I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. But you're right. Artists tend to be introverts in one way or another.
And you were always family oriented. It was always family first. And, a lot of managers, a lot of people in the record business will say that if you're not touring, then you're not real. You're not a real entity if you're not actually.
Well, and you're not making money for yourself or them.
Right, yeah. There's that too. But the Beatles stopped touring. They made these amazing records because they just focused on being in the studio. Mm-hmm. You toured very little. Mm-hmm.
But back then you could make money with record sales and songwriting, right? I mean, that was a...
Well, back then
better.
You could, yes.
Yeah.
Now I think touring is the only way an artist can make money, and you have to be known. And people of my generation do go out because there's still an audience, but our audience is dying off.
Or they'll go to Eastern Europe, they'll go anywhere just to keep the tour going. But with you, it didn't seem like you needed that. Some of those performers, that's what they need to.
I will never forget David Crosby saying to me one time, and I believe he's happier now. He's also on tour now, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
He's touring with his son, right? But I remember one time he said to me, my life is hell except for those 2 hours on stage, and those are heaven. I love those 2 hours, and the rest of my life is hell. I thought, that's so sad.
Yeah.
It always made me say, God, I hope he's happier now.
You didn't have that. Your songs always had a joy to them. Even the ones that are ballads, there's a joy to the song. The writing, the chords, the melodies.
Performing, I'm going to share a story with you. I think this is probably an exclusive. I've told people, but not in a public way. But when I'm on stage, I love performing, especially when I have a band. But when the band goes off and it's just me and the audience, I enjoy that too, because I feel like I'm talking to one friend and playing and, sharing a thing. And I really do enjoy it. I miss playing with a band. I have to say that. I do love playing with a band so much because there's nothing like it. But I have never felt, except for one time, which I'm about to share with you, that feeling of, they love me. Oh my God. I always feel like I'm out there doing my job, and it's a job I love, and I enjoy it, and I know how to do it, and I know what the job is, which is they've come to hear me sing the songs that the audience loves. That it is the soundtrack of their lives. And for the younger ones that come now, they heard the music when their grandmothers played it for them. Or, so there's kind of, it's become the soundtrack of more generations. So for me, my job is to go out there and bring that to them live with all the feeling in my heart that I possibly can. And it's always maximum, because that's what is demanded of me. And I'm like, yes, I'm here to do exactly that. I love you for coming and thank you. But I always see that as, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't take the love in, even though it is for me. I mean, I am loved. I get that. But I don't take it seriously in the way that some artists do. And it destroys some artists when they don't have it. And I can't even give you specific examples. I'm just saying, we all know that happens. But this one time, this very strange thing happened. I remember where I was. I was at Pine Knob in Detroit, or outside of Detroit, and it was pouring rain. And I've had this experience when people come out in the rain. it always blows me away. You know, they're sitting there and they're just in their ponchos and just getting drenched, and they're there to hear the music. And it makes me love them even more, and it makes them love me even more, because they're making this sacrifice because they're there. They know I'm there for them. And so at the end of the show, I remember taking a bow, and, you know, it was overwhelming, the response from that particular audience. I think it might have been in 75. We can look this up or whatever. But the response was so overpowering, and I felt my heart open up just a little bit and take it in. It was the most frightening thing I've ever felt. It was so powerful. I could almost feel the physical thing of a doors closing. I went and closed the doors to keep out that frightening feeling. It was too much love. It was just too much. It was unreal. It was real. So that's why it was so powerful. But I felt like, no, I can't take this in. I have to, because if I'm taking it in, it will destroy me. And I didn't know why, but I never allowed that to happen again. And it doesn't mean I feel the love. I mean, in Hyde Park, that audience of 65,000, I felt the love. But there's a thing that I also know. I tell myself this sometimes, and I'm not always successful, like, you've got a friend. When I play that song live, people are, you know, holding each other, crying, singing along, and I'm taking all that in, and it's the same kind of thing. Well, if I let that get to me, I'm going to be crying. And if I'm crying, I'm not singing.
And you have to think of really horrible things that are unspeakable to just...
Well, you know what? I joke about that, but what I finally figured out, and I felt this at the Hyde Park concert, there were several moments in that performance when my emotions were starting to get the better of me, and I found the key to stop that. Because I have to stop it, because if I'm crying, I'm not singing. And I'm there to sing. And it just comes down to 3 words: do your job. And that kept the emotion. And I was able to, I still felt the emotion, but it brought it under control so I could continue to sing. It is such a strange thing to be that person. Not many people get to do that.
That's right.
Springsteen wrote about it, and I read that, and I'm like, I can't believe I do the same thing that he, you know, but he speaks of working with an audience and all this stuff. It's like, I mean, I'm me and he's him, but it's a thing very few of us get to do. And I'm so blessed to be able to do it, but it's also my job. I want to do, like you said, excellence. I want to do it well. I'm not, you know, I'm not driven by, oh my God, I have to do it well. I'm there to do it well. That's my job.
You're not taking on the projections as reality. And I once took an acting class when I was young in LA with somebody who was from Kabuki theater. And what he taught is people think that what's inside is the most important thing when you're projecting and performing on stage. But what people see is what's on the outside. And his whole thing was, you have to be in control of what you're projecting. What you're feeling, you can do whatever you want behind the scenes to get yourself to project the role that you're projecting. But what's important is what people see. This is you're on stage. And I found that to be anti-intuitive, because you came from all this background of you got to get into the emotion and feel the feelings and bring them back. But I hear what you're talking about as a professionalism. It's almost like, you know, the people on the street selling drugs, they don't take the drugs that they're pushing.
Destroy you.
Yeah.
I've never heard it, but if you let all that love in, it would just kind of wreck you in a way.
It was terrifying. I don't know why. I don't know what could have happened, but it was too big. It was too big.
Like a drug. Almost.
Yeah, and that also made me think of David Crosby, because David did let it in, I guess, you know? And then when it wasn't there, he wanted it, more of it. You know?
Yeah.
And then again, David used to do drugs also. So
Did he? David Crosby? Okay.
you didn't know that, did
That's
you?
interesting.
Anyway, I haven't seen him for years. I love that guy.
I love him too.
I saw him
Great.
more recently than you did then. I saw
When
him
did
about
you see
4
him?
years ago. Yeah.
He's happy.
Yeah, he's doing good.
He's doing good. And Graham I talked to fairly recently. Graham is my bud. I love Graham. And I'll share another story with you while you have me. I'm getting close. I'm getting close to burnout. I'll share another story with you, which is Paul McCartney and I. We've met and we've spoken, and we don't see each other very often or communicate very often, but when we do, there's always a lovely exchange, and I love him. He's a great talent, a great guy, real, Hard to be real when you're a Beatle, but
Yeah.
he manages. And we had this conversation. I think I was talking to him about my memoir. I interviewed different people. And we had this conversation about what it was like for me to be with Gerry and how similar it was for him being with John, because both Gerry and John were more genius level in the way of, having vision far beyond. Paul is like me, and we shared this with, and he by the way, I said, this is just for our conversation. I just want to, he said, oh no, feel free to share it with the world if you want. So I guess I'm sharing it, but no, it's just the commonality of, Gerry used to say, you have to be fucked up to be a genius. I was like, no, you don't. I don't know if I'm a genius. I mean, some people say I am. I know I'm gifted. I have a gift. Let me leave it at that. But if I had to opt for, if I had to be fucked up to be a genius, I would opt not to be fucked up. And have made my life to be as close to not being screwed up as I could, deliberately. Before, it wasn't a reaction to Gerry. That's what I wanted. I was going to be a teacher, a nice Jewish girl. And, Paul kind of felt the same way, that, he found the joy in being, a happy guy, and, he didn't want to be messed up. And here he has this partner who's like out there. And it was hard sometimes. It's hard. It was really hard. And
the thing we always felt about you, that a lot of these great artists, they didn't seem present. They were on drugs. You always seem really straight in there. You seem like a real person in a different way. And I think that's why the songs meant a lot to you. It's like, this is coming from a real person.
That's a fair point. That is a fair point.
And also, part of it also was seeing you was like, she wrote these songs as well as singing them and playing them. They came from her.
Well, the reason for me singing them is that I wrote them.
Yes. But
and initially, me singing them was the way that they got to the world. And after that, it got to the world through, for example, Aretha Franklin.
Right. And she's a miraculous singer. But when you see the person singing it and know you wrote it as well, there's just a special magic.
Well, and that's why 3 notes with laryngitis worked for the audience.
Yeah.
Let's
wrap this
Well, I
up.
think we should do this every Thanksgiving. We should have a tradition where we do a new one, because I
Let's
have
eat.
4,000 more questions. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, this was fantastic. And now you can relax for the rest of Thanksgiving vacation.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to do this. It was everything. This has been everything that I hoped it would be. It was very candid, and you're very good at interviewing because you make it a conversation, because I feel completely comfortable, and that is key.
Great. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
That's the end of our part 3 of our interview with Carole King, your mom. That was a long one and a really special one. And she really gets into places and talks about things in there that she really never spoke about before.
I think it's funny that we have to wait all these years. All the journalists finally get to know what they needed to do to get her to open up, but it's about, 50 years too late.
Have you there. That helps. Yeah.
Yeah, have me there. Well, yeah, but that's the thing, is people love talking about the creative process when they're talking. Well, you're an expert at it. You've been doing it for years. People open up to you and they trust you. And
I think as they do with you, because we're songwriters and we come because we want to know about the chords and the stuff that, that really goes into writing songs. And songwriters so rarely get asked about the meat and bones of the thing, the actual process or chords. And that's where we live. So much of the genius of songwriters is in that stuff that they don't get to speak about. So it's always a great opportunity to talk to a real genius of songwriting and talk about the process. And your mom is one that likes to talk about it and can talk about it. You ask her some hard questions. Talking about music is an abstract thing to talk about, and she can do it pretty well.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking to her about the creative process. And we both have a joy of making things, that didn't exist. As she said, there's a something where there was a nothing. And that is really the inspiration.
Yeah, and that's the essence of true greatness, I think, in songwriting. That it's not about writing a song that's going to go somewhere. That's not really the idea. It's just writing the greatest song you can write at that moment and connecting with it and realizing it to its full potential. And she could certainly do that. And as she said, sometimes this great songs would just come out of nowhere. Like You've Got a Friend, she said, just came. But others took a lot of work. And you bring both. But it's enjoying the work, enjoying the process that really has the impact on the song. And I think that's why those songs last. They're timeless because that's in them. That's there forever.
Well, she says it came out of nowhere, but she says it was influenced by listening to James Taylor. And that's the thing. When you love something, it does get in your DNA, it gets in your cells, and then it can't help but come out in the next thing that you do. The thing about being in creation, I think, is to ingest as well as create. Because if you're not taking in things that inspire you, you don't have the ingredients to put together. Well, of course, she's never going to run out of ingredients.
Yeah.
But it's great to hear that, she was inspired by.
Yeah, and she had that great dynamic of being, as we know, one of the, first to be a great hit songwriter, writing songs for other people, many hits, and then becoming the artist. And yet the songs were always great, but she brought both of those. So she was a great artist writing really heartfelt songs, but also was a songwriter that loved to get her songs cut, and having James sing that, which was just a perfect song for her. I mean, she knew that was the perfect song for James Taylor. She seemed to get much more joy out of that than making her own records.
Here we go at the end of episode 3 with my mom, and we have 2 more coming. And here's the thing. We thought we were done at the end of this interview. You were flying off to Chicago for Thanksgiving to be with your family. And I have never seen her be interested in continuing to talk as long as this. And I was ready way earlier for her to hit that look of I'm burnt out, and it never came. And then the next morning when I said, thank you so much for doing that, she said, I thought of things that I didn't say that I really wanted to add. And I said, well, okay, we've got the mic set up here. We can talk. And so we sat down, and we have 2 more episodes because she talked about so many other things the following day. So we've got a lot to share.